The confession is the most powerful evidence in a court of law.
Previously on Tunnel Vision.
And those of us who work in this field have seen that confession evidence will even trump DNA evidence. For whatever reason, police lock in on a suspect. They believe that suspect is guilty. Tunnel vision takes over, and nothing the suspect can say is going to shake them from that belief.
My name is Avery Tatro, and you're listening to Tunnel Vision, Episode 5, Theories. As we know by now, in 2011, 20-year-old Andrea Eilber was found dead while house-sitting for her aunt and uncle in Michigan. Andrea's boyfriend Casey was convicted and jailed for this crime. We are investigating what really happened. Today we are focusing on the various theories that were suggested in Andrea's case. Some were investigated, others were not. The available evidence may provide important clues about this puzzling crime. In October 2015, Al Norris, the detective hired by Casey's defense, produced investigative records with the help of Detective David Minzy of the Michigan State Police. Within the 50 pages of information that Detective Minzy provided are several possible theories about what may have happened to Andrea and whether evidence exists to support or disprove them. Also contained within the document is a very detailed criminology profile, which is an investigative tool to identify the offender. We will include portions of this profile, like the following, to paint a more colorful picture.
Mr. Norris, the following assessment is based upon statistical data, training, and analysis of similar incidents. Individual suspects may not fit every aspect of the profile and should not be eliminated for failure to match every descriptor. Part 1. Criminal Profile. The offender is not only psychopathic, he is a pathological liar. He will often lie in situations where he does not need to. As he is an accomplished actor, others may notice that he can change from one emotion to the next, from one role to the next role, like a chameleon.
The first possibility, and one that the prosecution rested heavily upon during trial, was that Andrea's murder was emotionally driven. They hypothesized that Casey became angry when Andrea canceled their plans to hang out on the night of November 14th. Thinking that she may have been cheating on him with another guy, they believed that Casey killed Andrea in a fit of rage. Regardless of whether you believe Casey did it or not, the evidence of the crime does not suggest that Andrea's murder was driven by emotions. I caught up with Casey's Aunt Susie and cousin Christy.
They were saying it was a crime of passion, so how could it be a crime of passion when she was tied up and shot execution style? That's not a crime of passion. No. She wasn't choked, stabbed, even beaten, shot face to face.
Usually in a murder of this nature, there's evidence of escalation. A disagreement often leads to an argument may lead to a physical confrontation, which may progress to the use of a weapon. This scenario typically involves two individuals struggling to gain or maintain power and control over the other person. There was no evidence to suggest that a struggle occurred in the house. Andrea did not sustain any bruises, marks, or cuts to indicate that she was in a physical altercation with someone. If the cause of death is not manual strangulation, there is often a weapon of some kind that is readily available. For example, a kitchen knife, tool, or something else within arm's reach, but most likely not a gun. Additionally, detectives concluded that the weapon was brought to the scene by the offender. None of the guns missing from the residence matched the caliber of the gun that was used to kill Andrea. Emotionally driven killings often occur in rooms that are associated with emotion, like the bedroom, or rooms where individuals tend to congregate, like the kitchen. It's unlikely that Andrea was hanging out with someone in the basement laundry room when an escalation occurred. During the few times that Casey and Andrea had disagreements, Casey followed the same pattern of behavior. Conflict would arise, the two would separate for a period of time, and then resolve their differences verbally. None of their friends or family had ever recalled a physical altercation between them.
The murder of Andrea was a very cold, calculated execution. The offender planned the event and came prepared with a weapon. He believes that he is smarter than anyone, including the police. not feel bad about what he did, nor will he ever. The crime scene in this investigation is well organized and reflects planning. This individual controls his life in the same way. He plans his activities and is methodical, particularly when committing crimes. While he is not overly meticulous compared to his peers, he is much more cunning and organized.
The next possibility is that Andrea's murder was the result of a gang initiation, but the evidence doesn't seem to match up to this either. Typically, it's important that there's a high level of risk for the initiate. Despite the gruesome nature of this murder, it would not be considered very daring. It is also important for other gang members to observe the murder. It would have been quite difficult to sneak an entire gang into the Hummer residence without being seen by neighbors. Additionally, the scene would contain many more fingerprints and footprints if there were several people there witnessing the crime. The victim of a gang initiation is generally someone significant, such as a rival gang member. According to everything we know, this was not Andrea. These types of murders usually reflect a great deal of aggression. The primary intent is often to hurt, torture, humiliate, demean, and/or punish the victim. Deaths are often slow, requiring the victim to endure verbal harassment, physical abuse, and submission to any and all demands. Female victims especially are routinely sexually assaulted by one or more of the gang members. The crime scene and the nature of Andrea's body when it was discovered were not consistent with any of these details. She was not sexually assaulted, and the evidence shows that her murder was likely pretty swift, not drawn out like typical victims of gang initiation.
A critical component of the offender's personality involves his ability to manipulate and control others. Those who know him will likely describe him as more of a loner. This individual is street smart. However, he has never applied himself. His world is only about himself. Once the offender has gotten what he wanted, he will likely see little value in maintaining that relationship. As in this murder, once he felt he had achieved all that he was going to get, there was no need to keep the victim alive.
Another possibility that detectives investigated was that Andrea was killed by a stalker. What's interesting, actually, is that when detectives interviewed Andrea's friends and family, a few of them mentioned that Andrea was being stalked by someone. When Andrea's dad was asked about anyone that may have had a crush on Andrea, he reported that he had heard of a stalker who had worked at Archie's with Andrea, but nothing came of this. One of her friends, Cheyenne Robinson, had also heard Andrea had a stalker and assumed that it was a past boyfriend. In November 2013, 2 years after the murder, Andrea's cousin Nikki Templeton contacted investigators. She said that on Halloween 2011, she was with Andrea when she got a text from her stalker. Andrea indicated that it was someone who had a crush on her but never mentioned the name of the individual. Still, Andrea's killing is not consistent with that of a typical murder committed by a stalker. These types of crimes often reveal aspects of the offender's personality and fantasy. Victims may be forced to wear specific items, say specific things, and may be posed after death. They can take a long period of time depending on the complexity of the offender's fantasy, level of control, and resources. Most involving female victims exhibit some sexual behavior, even if the behavior is abnormal. There was no evidence of sexual behavior in this case, nor was Andrea positioned in any strange way or found wearing anything out of the ordinary. However, there were some strange items taken from the Hummer house, including bedsheets, a sweater, and a bottle of cologne. Several of Andrea's personal items were stolen as well, including her purse, cell phone, and driver's license. Stalkers often take souvenirs from their victims that help them to relive the experience of the crime.
An investigation may not find evidence of fantasy or sexual experimentation, but they almost always find that the offender has taken trophies or souvenirs. These items are personal to the victim. It is not uncommon that an item may be taken and its absence was not noticed, as it was not considered a value, like money. These items allow the offender to relive the event over and over.
The next theory is one that gained significant traction with Casey's family. In fact, it was the one that initially piqued my interest the most when I first examined the details of the case. This theory suggests that Andrea's murder was connected to a drug debt. If Andrea owed drug money, it's possible that the dealer was threatening her in an attempt to collect the money that she owed. This process is typically a financial one. For a murder of this nature to occur, the dealer would have to feel as though they would never be able to collect the money. To murder a customer would mean that they would never receive the payment. It would be a means of last resort. And by the way, Andrea's only association to any type of illegal drugs involved recreational marijuana. It's also possible that someone in Andrea's life owed money and the dealer was trying to send a message. The evidence doesn't quite match up with this theory either. If Casey owed a drug debt, in all likelihood, he would have been threatened first. It's extremely atypical for murder to be the first course of action. Again, Casey only rarely smoked marijuana. Drug dealers usually feel fairly confident when it comes to a drug debt. They believe that no one will call the police as it would be necessary for the victim to divulge that they were also involved in illegal drug activity. It is unlikely that a threat of going to the police would have been a motive for killing because a threat probably wouldn't have been made in the first place. Additionally, drug dealers do not want their activities to come to the attention of the police. This murder guaranteed that police would be involved and the homicide would get lots of media attention.
The offender uses his verbal skills as a weapon to manipulate and control others. Most of the time, he does get his way. If he doesn't, he will eventually respond. He has learned to control his anger and will hold a grudge, often for a very long time. It would not be uncommon for individuals to have forgotten the issue completely when the offender retaliates. Although he will demand others pay what he is owed, he likely never meets his own financial obligations.
Following the drug debt lead, investigators turned their attention to Andrea's half-brother, Aaron Adams, after he passed away in August 2012, less than a year after Andrea's murder. Aaron reportedly had a drinking and drug problem, which were thought to include prescription medications, marijuana, and crack cocaine. He certainly would have had contact with drug dealers. Officer Pendergraft stated that he was contacted by Jedediah Smith, Aaron's close friend, on November 19, 2014. Jedediah told the police that Aaron introduced Casey to a drug dealer in Flint before Andrea's death. According to Jedediah, Aaron and Casey both owed that drug dealer money at the time of Andrea's death, and someone had provided the drug dealer with information that Andrea had money. Aaron told Jedediah that he felt guilty over Andrea's death, and he believed that the drug dealer was involved in her murder. Jedediah provided Officer Pendergraft with a description of the drug dealer and the location where he normally sold drugs. Officer Pendergraft testified that he was not provided with enough information to further investigate. Aaron's cause of death was an overdose of sleeping pills, most likely a suicide. According to information obtained in the investigation, Aaron became severely depressed following Andrea's death. Jedediah's brother Jeremiah said Aaron was never the same after she was killed. According to Aaron's cousin and roommate, Joshua Davis, who was with him on that August night, Aaron was drunk on vodka, stating that he wanted to go to sleep and not wake up. Aaron lived in a trailer home and did not appear to have many financial resources. Even if Andrea was killed to send him a message, it's highly unlikely that the murder would improve his ability to repay a debt. If the murder was meant to send a message, it would be important that the message be sent loud and clear to other customers. If this really was the case, would other customers be able to make the connection between Aaron's drug debt and Andrea's murder? Did Aaron have a drug debt in the first place? And if he did, was this public knowledge? Another drug-related theory is that the murder was an addict who broke into the Hummer house looking for drugs.
But, there's always wondering if there was drugs involved. Did they think that there was drug money and then there wasn't? Well, now she's seen them. She knows who they are. So they're pissed off.
Why do you think a 19-year-old has all this money in the bank?
But maybe they thought the aunt and uncle
had the money
at the house, or drugs. Maybe that was, and then if they didn't, well, now she's seen them. So we're at least going to get your ATM card and take a little bit of money.
Yeah.
And what are we going to do? We got to kill her because she saw us.
Individuals who are addicted to drugs can become desperate when in or near withdrawal. These individuals tend to rob pharmacies, break into homes near where they live, and steal from people close to them. If this were the case, it is highly unlikely that the offender would have thought to move Andrea's car. It would also be more likely that the house was ransacked, which in this case it was not. It is unknown if the Hummers had any prescription medications, but an addict would search for them anyway, and the Hummers did not report any missing.
The offender may have arrests for DWI and for unpaid parking tickets. He likely has used alcohol and other drugs to help him control himself. This offender is primarily known as a thief. He would rather take something from somebody else than earn it himself. He has stolen from everyone, neighbors, friends, co-workers, and even his family. As a child, he may have been involved in cruelty to animals, perhaps tying them up first.
The final theory that the Michigan State Police considered was that Andrea's murder was carried out by a hired hitman. These types of murders typically follow a similar pattern. The crime scenes show little if any evidence of emotion. Offenders often use a blitz style of attack in which victims are killed quickly and efficiently. The death is often made to look accidental, which it was not in this case. The crime scene may be staged, and there is rarely secondary criminal activity like theft. Items were stolen from the Hummer house, however, including Andrea's personal belongings. According to detectives, murder does not appear to be the primary motivation, so what was it? Something that can point us in the right direction is the fact that Andrea was not killed immediately. She was at least tied up to the chair before being shot. This indicates that the offender wanted information from her. While it is likely that she was in tremendous fear at some point, she did not resist. No marks on her body or evidence in the house indicate that she acted aggressive or fought back. The investigations suggest that the motivation was about something that Andrea owned or controlled, but it doesn't seem like it was money, right? Andrea was a 20-year-old grocery store worker, likely making not much more than minimum wage. Her lifestyle was not lavish, she did not wear any expensive clothing or jewelry, her car was in poor mechanical condition. It is unknown if she received any insurance money from her mother's death, but even so, she did not come from a particularly wealthy family. As we know, investigators zeroed in on Casey with tunnel vision. According to the defense, the police overlooked other suspects, leading them to take the investigation into their own hands. For one, they believed that the police should have focused on Jeff Babcock, the man who found Andrea's car abandoned in the local state game area the night before her body was discovered.
The investigation suggests that the offender had a connection to the Hummer residence. He came to the residence when the Hummers were on vacation. He committed this crime when the victim was alone. The offender was armed and likely had restraints with him. In addition, he seemed to be comfortable in this neighborhood. The offender was able to navigate his way to and from the residence and the Lapeer State Game area at night.
The defense questioned how Jeff was able to find the missing car when he was allegedly given improper directions by Casey. When Jeff called Casey to ask where the Hummer residence is located, Casey said that it was off of Rudes Lake Road, while it's really on Kings Mill Road. But the car wasn't found on Rudes Lake Road. Jeff and his girlfriend Michelle found the car on Fives Lake Road, which is at least a mile away. You might recall when we discussed the surveillance footage that captured a man withdrawing money from Andrea's debit card at an ATM in Burton, Michigan. The video shows him driving away in a dark-colored SUV, which the defense hypothesized could have been Jeff's black Jeep SUV. Another aspect that the defense found suspicious was the note on the kitchen counter at the Hummer house, which contained Casey's name and cell phone number. Jeff called Casey's cell on the night of November 15th to ask about Andrea's whereabouts, even though Casey didn't have Jeff's number. The defense wondered if the note on the counter could have belonged to Jeff, as no one else in the Hummer house had reason to write down Casey's cell phone number. During cross-examination, it was revealed that after several years of working at Kroger, he quit just a few weeks after Andrea was murdered. The police never searched Jeff's car or house.
Following the murder, the offender will be very curious as to what the police know. His mistrust of anyone but himself may result in an attempt to inject himself into the investigation. This would include talking to others about the case and asking them what the police were saying. If he attempts to establish an alibi, he may try to remind someone that they saw him at a certain place, at a certain time. His problem will be that he may forget what story he told to whom.
Another individual who raised suspicion was a man named Michael Garibay. Andrea unfriended him on Facebook shortly before her death. Kayla Burrows, who was a mutual friend of the two, testified that Andrea had done this because she found his posts to be annoying. Not long after Andrea was killed, Michael posted a picture of himself holding a gun and wearing a sweatshirt that bore similarity to the one stolen from the Hummers. Officer Pendergraft testified that the police searched Michael's cell phone and compared his DNA and fingerprints to the known samples, but there was not a match. The police could only trace his telephone records back to November 19th, 5 days after Andrea's murder. Michael claimed that he did not have a cell phone before that day. Officer Reese stated that there was no evidence of contact between Michael and Andrea's cell phone records in the weeks before the murder. Because Michael Garibay seemed like a dead end, his house and car were never searched.
Following the murder, the offender's behavior may be unusual. While he is not a caring or compassionate person, he may have shown an unusual interest in the victim in this investigation. Investigators may want to review any video that may exist of the victim's funeral. The offender may have attended the funeral, and his presence may strike some as unexpected.
Several witnesses at Andrea's funeral recalled a man looking at Andrea's wrist in what they thought was a suspicious manner. This man was identified to be Raymond Fuller, and it turns out that he and Andrea may have had a little fling. It was reported that Andrea didn't like that Raymond used to hang out around a lot of girls. The two never dated, but had talked about it before. One witness told Officer Reeves that Raymond moved out of state shortly after Andrea's murder, which they thought was strange. Officer Pendergraft testified that Raymond's cell phone pinged the tower for the Speedway in Burton on the day that Andrea's card was used for an ATM withdrawal. Pendergraft noted, however, that Raymond lived 2 miles away from that Speedway, so it would not have been out of the ordinary for him to be in the area. Additionally, Raymond voluntarily provided his DNA and fingerprints, which did not have any match at the crime scene. Raymond's cell phone did not ping the area of the Hummers' residence on any of the days in question. Again, Raymond seemed like a dead end, so police never searched his house or car.
In terms of criminal history, this individual will likely be thought of more as a thief. While this offender is not stupid, he is lazy. He would rather take something from someone else than earn it. Due to his age, many of his crimes may have been committed while he was a juvenile. While this crime was violent, individuals who know the offender may not think that he would commit a murder.
Another individual who police looked into was a man named David Fletcher. David's father, who worked in law enforcement, saw the Speedway video and called the police, saying that he believed the man in the video to be his son. David's aunt Bonnie told police that she agreed that the man in the video was David. Bonnie said that David lived with her for a while and had stolen property of hers. She described him as a drug user and a thief. The investigation revealed that on December 22, 2012, about a year after Andrea was killed, David had parked his aunt's stolen car at the Tim Hortons next to the Speedway, walked over to the Speedway, and committed a carjacking. The defense pointed out the similarity between David's actions and the actions of the individual who had withdrawn money from the ATM using Andrea's debit card. Officer Reeves testified that he searched David's cell phone, but not his house or car. Officer Ainsley testified that David's cell phone did not ping off a tower anywhere near the Hummers' house on November 14th or 15th of 2011. Eventually, he was cleared as a suspect. His fingerprints and DNA did not match those at the scene. The police discovered that David committed the carjacking in the midst of a drug binge and used an airsoft gun, not a .38 caliber handgun like the one that was used in Andrea's murder. Interestingly, none of the suspects investigated were women. Susie and Christy believe there's a female link that could be the key to uncovering what really happened.
You know, and the whole idea that there was, like I said, unidentified DNA and unidentified and female DNA. So you immediately suspected there's a female somewhere.
I don't know. I feel there's got to be a missing piece, and it's that girl's DNA.
The girl's DNA.
I feel like whoever she is, she knew Andrea. maybe knew her, the aunt and uncle. I don't know, but knew of the house. Maybe that Andrea was housed. Maybe met her at some point. But regardless, they were let in.
Yeah, and the place is out in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
It's not like you would
It's
randomly come across.
It's not like it is here.
A few strange things happened at the Hummer residence in the years following the murder. Stuart Hummer told investigators that while he was outside on his property cutting firewood sometime in January or February of 2013, he noticed a small stuffed animal on the ground, which appeared to have been there for some time. He described it as a Taco Bell dog. According to Stephanie, Andrea had one of those stuffed dogs, and she had washed it in their washing machine. Investigators noted that it was found northwest of the residence near a trail that ended well before reaching the road. Stewart also told investigators that on July 4th, 2012, he returned home from a party and observed a man standing in his yard with a bicycle. The man told him that he was a neighbor, had heard a noise, and came to the property to check it out. Stewart didn't know the man's name, and he left without further incident. Sometime after July 4th, Stephanie reported that the same man came up to her front door after dark and started knocking. She reportedly called the police, but before they arrived, Stephanie saw a woman usher the man back into the car and they drove away. Despite every lead, every strange detail we've uncovered, the case holds tight to its secrets, leaving us with more questions than answers.
If a warrant is issued, officers need to take great care. This offender will do everything in his power to avoid going to prison. He has already shown that he will use firearms. If he is captured, he loses. The most important thing is to win, even if it costs him his life. Respectfully submitted, Detective First Lieutenant David Minzy, Michigan State Police.
Coming up on Tunnel Vision.
We don't have murders in Lapeer. And if we find him guilty, we got a murderer off the streets.
No evidence was brought before you of any domestic violence, any verbal abuse, any criminal record that shows Casey was violent. Just the opposite.
This is a young man's life in your hands, and you're not listening.
You've been listening to Episode 5, Theories. If you have any information that could help with the investigation of this case, contact us directly at tunnelvisionseries@gmail.com. Tunnel Vision is written, produced, and hosted by Avery Tatro. Editing by Michael Tatro. To keep up with new episodes, subscribe to Tunnel Vision on Apple Podcasts. Original music is by Michael Tatro and Suno AI.